Hi, I want to give everyone some clear guidelines on avoiding plagiarism because the topic is so important and it applies to both your major writing projects and also to the weekly discussions. Because people can be plagiarizing each other's work perhaps without even being aware of why and how that happens. So I did lay out a section on academic integrity in the syllabus course policies, which is good to revisit. And it defines plagiarism, representing someone else's words, ideas, artistry, or data as one's own, including copying another person's work. But I want to get a little more nitty-gritty on that for you. So the dictionary definition of plagiarism, as presented to you by Google, the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own. The passing them off. Notice that Google credits, this definition comes from the Oxford Languages. Oxford publishes a series of dictionaries, the Oxford Dictionaries of the English Language, so that Google's not plagiarizing, right? You have to cite, even if you're Google. And fun fact, notice the origin of the word plagiarism. Can you see here Latin, plagium, a kidnapping? So when you take another person's ideas and words, you're taking their intellectual offspring. You're kidnapping their babies. Okay, but joking aside, this is a really serious matter because this is a form of theft. And it harms relationships with colleagues and it destroys reputations. There are very famous people who've had their reputations really marred by issues with plagiarism. So this is something you need to get straight right now, right? Because you don't want to be in a professional world and be considered unethical. Plagiarism is a form of dishonesty. You don't want people thinking of you as someone who's dishonest, who lacks credibility. So you need to know exactly how to avoid plagiarism. Now, most of us understand I can't just take an entire essay off the internet and put my name on it. But plagiarism is not just that kind of wholesale taking of an entire completed work. If we look at this posting from Bowdoin College's Office of the Dean of Students, they break down the common types of plagiarism that include direct word-for-word transcription, but also what they call mosaic plagiarism. I want to highlight this because I'm seeing it happen a little bit at times in some of the discussions, and I want you to not do that because it is still plagiarism. When you borrow phrases, you're not using quotation marks, and perhaps you try to tweak it a little bit by finding a synonym for a word here or there, but the general structure and idea are the same. That is still plagiarism. They also introduced this term patch writing. But the important point here is whether intentional or not, it's still academically dishonest. And so you have to be very careful. It's great if you're getting inspired by a peer's work or by a source that you read. You just have to make sure that you indicate who inspired you and are very precise about signaling that. So let's use as an example Robin McDowell's posting in the Baroque to Modern class on Manet and realism in the 19th century. I've highlighted a set of sentences that I think are wonderful. As for the background, the other figures do not have defined faces, just smears of color, which makes them vague yet still identifiable as people. I think this adds to the general feeling of the painting, helping us, the audience, see the boisterous surroundings the same way the young woman probably does, since everyone that comes in and out are probably just indistinct customers in her eyes, just faces in a crowd. Wow, that's fantastic. That's really great art historical thinking about something very specific the artist did, making the backgrounds these sort of smears of color, and then linking that to the subjectivity, the mind state of the working woman in this environment. So suppose I'm so inspired by this that I go down and I comment and I reply, maybe let's imagine that I'm down after a number of other students have posted, and I've perhaps forgotten that I saw that in Robin's post, and I write, the blurred and smeared crowd really looks like what the working woman at the bar saw. That's still plagiarism. It's not her exact wording, but it is her idea reconfigured. And so it is actually a form of kidnapping her beautiful baby. And it's also dishonest. And what I want to emphasize is that it destroys relationships. It may not seem that much like this is true in college, but it is, that actually one of the things you're learning is the building of relationships and networks of connections with others. That's so important in your professional life. What causes so much harm with plagiarism is it actually means that these networks of connection and relationships are interfered with. So you should think of it as an act of joy to cite the person who inspired you. So act of joy, wow, Robin, here, just smears of color. If I found that very inspiring, I could say, Robin's, oh, what happened? Okay. Robin's comment about how the people are just smears of color, which makes them seem vague yet still identifiable as people, seems so true to what the working woman at the bar would have seen and felt, just as she points out. So now I can build from there. I can say, this reminds me of the blurred figure in the back of the Manet painting Déjeuner sur l'herbe. Déjeuner sur l'herbe, which should be italicized because paintings should be. And now I can build on her ideas, which is exactly what academics do, what thinkers do, is they make connections. They weave a web of connections. Because I've credited her, I've thanked her, I'm maintaining a good relationship with her, I'm respecting her babies. And so now I have the right to then say, oh, let me show you my baby. I'm going to connect this idea of another blurred figure. This is how to proceed, because you actually are always building your ideas out of other people's. That's not a flaw. What you have to do is to salute them, appreciate them, acknowledge them, honor them, and then go forward with your own idea. Take a quick look here at an article published by scholars Smith and Graves, Clayton and Randerson in 2017 on the topic of the medieval bishops of Durham. I'm just showing you this really quickly to show you that professional scholars, skilled scholars, always want to be abundantly citing. They actually start here. This is their first paragraph. They haven't even started talking, and already they have a footnote, and they're actually crediting people who have helped them. They're talking about the root system that has allowed their ideas to grow. And so here they introduce in the first sentence Durham Castle and Auckland Castle that they're going to be talking about. And they're already listing a number of articles, different authors on that. Because that is a sign of credibility in the academic world, that you have many citations. To have a bunch of ideas that aren't cited is sort of suspicious, because no one can form ideas without the help of other people's ideas. So everything you write should be like this diagram of prairie plants and their root systems. You should have the ideas you've grown, and you should show the root system of how they were embedded in a soil of sources.